see. We are live. And of course, this is going to give us issues. Oh, goodness. We've got one that was deleted. Oh, well, we'll just make it work. It's fine. Maybe we got it here. All right. Now we get to be. Yep. All right. We're live. We're live. We're live. We just lost one in my group. Oh, well, it's all good. We're fine. We'll go anyway. So welcome. I am so excited. We are finally kicking off our amazing InFLOWential FREEDOM Summit speaker series. If you're not in the know, I am Stacey Rasky, best-selling author, speaker, podcast host, Iraq War veteran, badass biker chick, leadership mentor, mindset coach, and founder of the InFLOWential Leadership Mastermind. And of course, these influential events, and that is one we are going to be talking all about today. So it is Tampa, Florida, November 10th and 11th. And we are going to be interviewing all the amazing speakers. We have an epic lineup focusing on self-leadership, self-mastery, self-respect, self-love, finding your voice, branding, and are really activating all of that awesomeness in you to better scale your impact, influence, freedom, and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, freedom is an inside job. It's nothing external. And so I am honored and excited to introduce you to the phenomenal Dr. Matt Chalmers. Welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh my goodness. Amazing. So let's see here. Now we're going to have all these beautiful tech issues. It's okay. So why not? Because it's the first one. All right. So please take a moment and introduce a bit about yourself, who you are, what you're doing in the world, who you serve, because you are doing some pretty powerful things in the world.
So, Dr. Matt Chalmers, I have a chiropractor by license. I have a specialty in neurology, sports medicine. I do a lot of work with quantum energy, and so we do a lot of work with resetting meridian lines, checking nutrition. We do a lot of hormone work. So that's kind of the medical piece. We put everything back together. We work a really functional path. So whatever the body's supposed to do, we take it back to that path and we allow it to do those things. So we've been able to, fix plantar fasciitis and carpal tunnel and scoliosis and frozen shoulder and PCOS and COVID and, celiac and all sorts of other things. So that's kind of the medical piece. And so there's a lot of this that we have to do from a medical standpoint first. So for instance, a lot of your serotonin is made in your gut. So if your gut's messed up, you're going to have all sorts of issues with adrenal function, POTS issues. You're going to have ADD, ADHD. So we go back through, we clean all that up, allow your body to function like it's supposed to, bring your testosterone levels up, reset everything so it can function. Then we start working on functional stuff in the mind, making sure that your body and your mind are going in the right direction so that we can get everything kind of back where it needs to be. We work a lot with our entrepreneurs. I'm actually a partner in it's kind of an interesting thing. We evaluate businesses as far as scalability and structure and function, and we reset those mostly for pro athletes. But that's one of the things we were doing as well as far as the entrepreneurial thing, figuring out why companies are going to work, why they're going to fail, and then putting them back together, especially focusing on the team. So your team is your CFO, CEO, COO. Like, can these guys get what they're saying they're going to get done? And if they can, then usually we'll pass them through and people can invest in them. If they can't, we'll either restructure them or reset them up. So while we do a ton of stuff on the health side, I got dragged into the venture capitalist side of this as the medical component. And so anything that has anything to do with health or wellness, I was in charge of, and now I just help restructure and refunction, mental function for a lot of our executives that we work with.
I love it. I love what you do too, and we were just talking about this, before we started chatting, because that was something, I think months and months and months ago, I started this dialogue with you. I was like, I realized as I'm working, doing different things, even though I'm not necessarily working more per se in my businesses, I was requiring more of myself, right? Requiring more cognitive function to be able to navigate all these ideas and creating things and leading these teams and doing all this stuff. Because I was like, well, God, why am I so tired? I don't feel like I'm doing more. And yet, oh, take a step back and do the 30,000-foot view. Your business has 5x'd itself, right? As the leader, that means I'm holding space for this many more team, clients, systems, goals, projects, all the shit, and then being able to vision drive that. And I'm like, oh, and you were the one who helped me see that, because I wasn't quite recognizing the gap. And you were like, well, you are requiring more of yourself, and this is what's happening. And I was like, duh, my nutrition's not keeping up, my rest, my self-care. And now I'm doing like the IV infusions. I've tweaked and modified my supplements a bit and all these different things. And it really came from a lot of the wisdom you shared with me. Would you like to share a bit more about that?
One of the biggest things that we see, especially nowadays, people are asking me, I just developed a nootropic that we might push out. But I've done supplement, development for a long time, the anti-hangover cure that I made 7 or 8 years ago.
Which is amazing, by the way.
We're actually going to take that. We're actually going to bring that up international in about 3 or 4 months. So that's going to be fun. Yay! Yes. Yeah. So what we see a lot of times is that people don't understand the amounts of fuel it takes to do the things we're doing. You see guys like Ryan, you see people like you see like where they're at the top and they're just like, oh, they just got everything under control. The problem is that if you're running a W12 engine, you need a lot more fuel. And if we don't give ourselves the fuel, and I'm not talking about calories, I'm talking about micronutrients, keeping everything functioning, we're gonna have a problem. If we don't understand the psychology and the neurology of what happens when you get stressed out. When you get stressed out, your body shifts from a parasympathetic resting, digesting to a sympathetic fight flight stance, and that shuts off everything digestive. Well, the problem with that is you don't bring in the nutrients. You don't make all this stuff. You're going to have lower testosterone because of the cortisol steal. You're going to have higher inflammatory issues. So you're going to have more fatigue problems. You're going to have more fibromyalgia. You're going to need more adrenal support so we don't have the ADD, so we can keep the brain, the reticular inflammation of the brain actually awake. So the problem with this is that it's always frog in the pot. We're fantastic when we're at 2x. We're okay at 3, and we think we're good at 4. And then I start getting people calling me being like, I am dying. I can't keep up with this. I don't know what's going on. Nothing's changed in my life. And I'm like, are you freaking, you have 1,000 more people than you had 2 years ago. And you're trying to do V12 work with a V6 engine. Like, you've got to feed yourself more. And so we go through and we clean everything up and we support it. We talk about how important sleep is and oxygen function. And, we get the body to be able to perform the way we want it to. And the problem with a lot of people because I have patients all over the world, the problem we see the most in this country is that we think if we eat the food, we're going to have the nutrients. And that's not the case because our food's so trash. So figuring out exactly how hard we're pushing ourselves, how we need to push back against that chemically is really, really important. But the other thing is that when we start having the chemical reduction and the nutritional deficiencies, we start having mental issues as well. And so if you can't understand why you're having the anxiety, why you're having the depression, why you're having these things, it'll start to eat at you. And it's like I said, it's the frog in the pot. It just gets a little bit worse over time. And then you finally pull your head up one day and go, how did I get here? I feel terrible. I hate what I do. My life is trash. And I don't know what happened to me. And then you take a step back and you're like, but I've made all this money and I have all this stuff. Where's the disconnect? And that's where we start trying to put everything back together.
So important. And it's such an easy piece to miss, right? Along the way, because we're just doing the thing, right? We're just going through it all. So
one of the biggest problems that we have with all of this stuff, which is why the internet and social media is phenomenal and terrible, is that we have all this information out and some of it's great and some of it's perfect. It just doesn't apply to you. Like there's certain diets, like why'd that work for Sarah, but it didn't work for me? Because it's the wrong diet for you. It's the wrong information for you. So being able to put these things together for people makes it a heck of a lot easier to come to one place and figure out, okay, this is how these things are going to work. This is how I need to put it together. And this is what's going to benefit me specifically. And so that's the biggest piece.
So spot on. So for the InFLOWential FREEDOM Summit, I kind of alluded to some of the magic and genius, all of these amazing speakers are bringing, but today is all about what you are going to be focused on discussing at our event. Would you be open to sharing kind of a teaser about some of the specific topics and genius you're going to be bringing on November 10th and 11th?
Yeah, so we're definitely going to talk about just the biochemical function, how the body actually works, and what we need to support ourselves, like the self-care, making sure we're where we need to be. But one of the things I always try to talk about with any of the people that we're working with is how we position ourselves for a long term. So like how we choose goals, how we set the goals properly, what are good goals and bad goals. And people are like, there's no such thing as a bad goal. That's not right at all. That's a horrible idea. If you set the wrong goal and you hit it, and you're like, how did I get here? This is not where I really wanted to be. It was because you set the wrong goals. You psychologically allowed yourself to be driven in the wrong direction, and it sets up lots of downsides to it. So those are the things that we're going to kind of be putting together. Like, Stacey and I were talking about when people come in, they're like, I talk to young entrepreneurs. I'm like, what's your goal? Like, I want to be rich. And like, that is legitimately the worst possible goal ever. And the reason is because, no joke, like no one comes in and goes, hey, can you help me be really, really poor? Like, if only I could find a way to be poor. Like we all want to be rich. The problem is if we set that as our goal, we don't have any anchors along the way. And we start developing bad habits associated with money. And we start viewing things in the frame of money. So if we start figuring out, well, what makes you money in your business? Does calling your damn leads? Does setting up your CRM? Does, in my case, figuring out how to fix everybody's issues? Well, if that's what's going to make you money, let's dive into that thing. Make you the very best at that, and the money will come on the side. One of my old mentors from the docs I worked with, he used to say, if you get into medicine to make money, he said, you're going to starve to death eating ramen noodles. Because if you get into medicine to help people, because you're going to run the tires off your Mercedes driving back and forth to the back. And that has been 100% true. And that's the type of thing that I try to instill in people of, what is our actual goal here? If we hit real goals, not only is the money going to come, but it actually doesn't matter as much at the end of the day. Not everybody needs a new Gulfstream. Like a lot of people can be really, really happy with a smaller frame. And that's really the goal, is to be happy.
Well, and I love that. I love that it's all about really tying into, understanding our big motivator, our big why, and how that's connected to the passion and the purpose. Because the money will follow. And that's one of those things within our influential ecosystem, our audience, everybody's very impact driven. Money is just not the motivator for them. They want to learn how to be their best self for whatever that message, that mission, that passion and purpose is, whatever that impact is they're called to make in the world, and be experiencing the freedom and fulfillment along the way and really enjoying the journey, and not getting to one goal and being like, oh shit, this is awesome that I did all this, but my health and my marriage fell apart along the way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many people that we talk, and I'm like, what does your spouse think about this? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't talked to him. I'm like, okay, if this is going to be your goal, they have to be on board. And here's the big issue. We see this a lot with people who choose the wrong partners. But if you have a path that you're trying to go on and you haven't made sure it jives with your spouse, we're going to create problems down the road. Whether it's 2 months or 2 years or 5 years, you're going to have to get to a point where everybody needs to be on board with the path. And so that's one of the things I always make sure, like, okay, once you figure out your goals and you're set on them, let's bring your spouse in and kind of discuss this with them and make sure everybody's on the same page. Because at the end of the day, if you get your goals, just like you said, but your marriage fell apart and your kids hate you, you're going to have a lot of regret. And that's the worst pain in the world. So that's why when we plan things out, we bring everything in. We do kind of a holistic deal. We look at everything together and be like, okay, is everybody on the same page? Because this is going to require a lot of time, dedication, and work. And if you start missing football games and stuff like that, the dance recitals, as long as your wife and your kids understand they're on board, it's not as big of a hit later.
Well, and I love how important, whenever I listen to you, how important it is personal responsibility and self-leadership in every aspect of life, business, relationships, impact, success, teams, like all the things. I know that's such a foundation piece of everything that you teach and talk about.
Yeah. So, Dr. Peterson talks about cleaning your room. And there's a lot more to that if you don't know who Peterson is. But what I always start with is people, because everybody who's an entrepreneur at some point wants to be a leader, a thought leader, a business leader, whatever it is. And I always start with, like, you cannot lead anyone until you can learn to lead yourself. when you say, this is my goal, and you commit to it and you push through it, that as soon as you learn to lead yourself, you don't have to learn to lead others. Others will follow your lead because you are actually leading. But there's so many people I talk to who can't figure out what they want. They don't know how to drive themselves. They're influenced by whatever everybody else is doing. And that's not the way to lead. Figure out what you want, lead yourself, and everybody will follow behind you. So yes, personal responsibility is all it is.
Well, and what's so interesting is the difference between what you just described, right? Which is a way of being, like you're embodying what it means to be a leader because you're leading by example. You're responsible for yourself. You're leading yourself. And ergo, now you are leading, influencing, and impacting those around you versus those who think they're a leader by title or by
demand.
Well, yeah, that too. Or like sometimes it's you get thrown into the position because you're the highest performing person on a team. So now you're the leader without the leadership skills. Or the people who start a business, and that's great as the operator, the doer, but they don't always bridge the gap over to being an actual leader.
Well, one of the things I see with leaders that are bad leaders is that it's like respect. Like you can't demand leadership. You can't demand respect. If you walk in and say, I demand you respect me, it's the easiest way for nobody in the room to respect you.
Right.
It has to be earned. Like, so like when someone comes and goes, why do you respect this person? Well, I respect him for these reasons. You know, like if you go see someone who's going to be personal trainer and, you know, they're always super dedicated with the way they eat and the way they lift and the way they sleep and they live that life. You're like, I can respect and follow this person because I know they're doing all the things personally. They live the life. They live it with integrity. That's who they are. So I can follow them and I can trust that what they're going to do is the right thing because that's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I see the results in them. That's what I want. So that's what it's like talking about. Like you have to lead yourself first because if you can lead yourself, then you live with integrity and everyone will come with you. So you can't demand to lead people. That's how everybody hates you. But if you're just the guy and you're like, this is what I do, this is who I am, and I do it better than everybody else, everyone just goes, okay. And they follow you because that's who you really are.
Well, what I've noticed too is the people who are able to be in that self-leadership space, there's such a great balance to who they're being that not only do they have the boundaries and the structure and the systems to keep themselves and others, right, safe and in line, but that at the same time, they've learned how to access their own emotional availability. And so their emotional intelligence improves. Ergo, now your communication's better. Mm-hmm. And now you're able to connect with your team in a much more effective and efficient way. And most importantly, when it comes to corporate culture, they're going to be emotionally invested in something bigger than themselves, you know, versus just having bodies on a team that show up to get it done and leave, mm-hmm. you know, where you're really connecting to a culture. But as the leader, we have to be able to hold that space and be vulnerable and be authentic for people to connect to something bigger than themselves. Otherwise, they're going to clock in and clock out and not give a fuck about what's happening, you know? But it does. It starts with us. We've got to set that example. And so for those that I see that can self-lead, they're able to have that great balance of the and the authenticity to truly create those high-performing teams and those high-performance cultures.
So one of the big things we talk about is you have to care. I can only care about the thing you're leading in a multiple of what you care. So if you care 0, it doesn't matter how much I care. We're not going anywhere. So that's one of those big things. So that's when we talk about, you know, if you want to lead in a space, you have to be all in that thing. And so that's, again, why I tell people, you know, trying to be rich is the worst idea in the world because, again, your goals are money, not I want to be the very best at this thing. And so that's the big thing. So like if you're in a corporate environment and nobody cares, the deal's not going to get done right. It's going to be over budget. It's going to take too long. No one's going to push a little bit extra. You're not going to break records. You're not going to, you know, increase sales. You're not going to do the things you need to do. You're not going to be innovative because you just don't really care. But if it's something you're passionate about, it's the type of thing where you go home from like, I wake up at 4 a.m. every day for 15 years and I read for 2 to 3 hours on the thing I do. no one makes me do that. I do that because I'm passionate about what I do. And so you can see it at the end of the day, because I can do things nobody else can do because I put the time and the effort into it. Because again, I've chosen to do this, and it's a self-lead thing. But that's the big issue, is that are we emotionally invested all the way in the things we're doing? And so that's a giant piece of setting your goals properly.
Well, and being able to break down those internal walls and working on letting go of the control issues that really get in the way of us accessing those parts of ourselves is so important. But it goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning. It's hard to do that work when we're tired, when we're nutritionally deficient, when we're stressed out like crazy. All of those things play into our ability to actually be present, focus, and follow through. Or be present and focus on the people that are around you nurture those relationships.
Well, one of the big things, once you get that into place, there's always going to be times where like you fly somewhere and you haven't eaten and you're tired and all those other things. Learning to deal with your stuff is really important. Like, it's always like people get mad at something. And I'm like, okay, stop. Why did that make you mad? And they're like, I don't know, just being mad. I'm like, then you're going to learn nothing from it. Stop. Figure out why you got mad at what he said or what she said. Because if there's truth in what they said and you're angry about that truth piece, you need to fix that. Because that you being angry is telling you something. It might be telling you need to eat more, or it might be telling you, I get a little hangry sometimes. It might be telling you that you have something inside you need to work on to deal with things going forward. And again, that's part of that working on yourself, taking ownership. Whenever something happens in my office, and it's bad, or anything I do, the first thing as I start to get angry, the first thing I do is I think, how can this be my fault? What role did I play in this? Because if I figure out what I did wrong and I at least admit my mistakes to me, I can fix it. Great example, I hired a nurse practitioner to help me do some hormone therapy. I did not ask her if she had her DEA current. Well, without a DEA, you can't write prescriptions for testosterone. Never asked her. And then 2 weeks in, all of her scripts started getting kicked back. And we found out she didn't have a DEA. And I got super mad. And I was like, this is entirely your fault, man. You didn't screen this person well enough. You didn't ask. You said, can you write scripts? She said, yeah, I'm good to go. I got my license, got everything. You didn't say, great, show it to me. So that was my fault. And people were like, are you mad at her? I'm like, why should I be mad at her? I never asked. It's entirely my fault. And so the next one I hired, the first question was, do you have your DEA? So I learned. Because I took personal responsibility for what happened. But that's a mindset thing of figuring out, I have this emotion, I have this problem. How do we best deal with it so that I fix it today, but I fix it forever?
Mm-hmm. And that requires that level of giving our self-awareness and giving ourselves that time and space to actually learn the lessons, to ask the question, to take that radical ownership and responsibility and say, okay, well, I only have control over me. What is my role in this situation? What was I responsible for here? And that means I now know what I can do different to fix it. And that's like the magic piece that so many people actually don't even slow down long enough to evaluate. And then they wonder, okay, why am I so off course?
Why can't I scale? I don't understand why I can't. Because you haven't fixed the things you've dealt with 15 times yet. You got to fix all this stuff before you can deal with the new stuff that is going to come along. And so, whenever I work with somebody, they're like, I have this issue. I'm like, we've talked about this 9 times. Like, do we need to get you a specific therapist just for this one issue? Because you aren't learning the lesson. And people go, I know. I'm like, you obviously don't know that, because we've had this conversation. So it is that, figuring out, taking ownership, being self-aware and fixing those things is probably the biggest piece that we do in everything. And, in our marriages, in our corporate relationships, and in our personal relationships, like with ourselves. So yeah, that's a really big part.
I love it. I can't wait to hear all the genius you are going to be bringing to the event in November. So for anyone that's on the fence about getting a ticket to the Freedom Summit, or they're kind of like, all right, there's so many events that are happening now, why do you recommend them making the time and coming to this one?
So there's a couple of different things. One, if you're on the fence about going to a summit like this regardless, you quit trying to decide, just go. Because the biggest thing is that, and I ran this by my staff, and they kind of went, if you've ever been to church camp, or you know someone who's been to church camp, you're all Jesus-y for like 2 or 3 weeks because you're around it and you're in it and you live it. And then you go back to society and society beats it out of you. Well, as entrepreneurs, you don't hang out in your business with a lot of other entrepreneurs. You hang out with people that you're trying to lead. And that's society, and that's normal people. And they will beat the hell out of you because you guys don't think alike, which is why you're the business owner and they're not. So getting around other business owners who can help you kind of just recharge your batteries and be like, yes, we all think the same. This is fantastic. That's a very, very crucial part. Now, the other piece is that, when you start seeing things, there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of summits out there that have just guys or just women involved. And the problem is that you need both aspects. You need both sides to understand if you're going to lead women or you're going to lead men, you should probably understand how they think. You should probably go listen to when they say, this is what's important to me. You go, gotcha. Because there's so many people that well, we'll just give them a raise. And my first question is that what motivates them? Is that what they care about? Do they care about recognition? Do they care about other things? And it's funny how many people just stare at me like they didn't even fathom that people care about things other than money. And I'm like, yeah, there's other stuff. Have you ever met a woman? Have you ever talked to one, maybe? So again, that's what I like about the summit. There's a good mix of that. But at the same time, there's going to be things that we're going to be talking about, not to just talk about my stuff, but we're going to be talking about some of the psychology, some of the neurology, some of the chemistry to keep you able to function, to keep you able to push forward. A lot of people aren't going to be able to have. And so that's going to be very, very special. So the way that Stacey's put this together and the people that she's brought together from a varied amount of fields allows us to have a lot more function and a lot more, we get a lot more questions asked, we get a lot more of ourselves worked on. And so we can become as the whole, we can become a better person. And that's really the end of this, is that, we can make a ton of money, but at the end of the day, when you leave your legacy, when you leave, the Queen just died. So you can look at her legacy. When you look at your legacy, what did you leave behind? How many people were changed because of what you did? How many people got to feed their kids because of what you did? What have you done? What have you left behind? And so there's a lot of that we can start to kind of piece together and make everybody better people. And that's really the crux of why I like to get involved in these things.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I definitely made it a point to curate a very diverse set of speakers. So it's not just all a bunch of people rah-rah on the same stuff. We have experts to support you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, your leadership, your, all kinds. There's just so much, I can't even rattle it all off at this point because I'm like, wait, there's even so much more. I don't know. But for the sake of time, to respect everyone's time. That's the thing. We've got diverse backgrounds. We've got diverse ethnicities. We've got the mix of genders. It's like, this is about supporting every aspect of you, the participant, because you're not just listening. You are participating in an experience that will transform you for the rest of your life. That is what this is about. We keep it intimate. You get access to the speakers and the experts, so you can ask those questions, so you can do the deep dives, so you can have the breakthroughs there, not just have that book full of notes that you are going to try to implement later. We're just doing the breakthroughs right there. So that's what this is all about. So, and Dr. Chalmers is one of our amazing people. And as you heard from his genius, he's got all of it covered. He's bringing all of that and is definitely going to bring in that physical component because it's so easy for us to forget about that when we're out there hustling, making the dream work. And we've got to make sure we are firing on all cylinders because we need that V12 roaring. roaring. So for those of you who haven't checked it out or haven't gotten your ticket yet, go to beinfluential.com/summit. We have it up above. We'll be sure to pop it in the comments again too, and grab your ticket today because we are keeping this small and intimate. So seats are limited because we want everyone to get that time where we get to work together and really mastermind and make some amazing things happen. So thank you so much, Dr. C, for joining me today. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned as we have way more of these amazing interviews on the schedule. So you'll get the opportunity to listen to everyone share a bit about what they'll be bringing to this epic event in November. Thanks for joining us.
See you guys.